Bill, thank you so much for being with us today.
You bet. My pleasure, Mitch.
Well, you grew up in North Carolina. What was that like?
Well, it was a small town, about 10,000 people, and it was a football town. Imagine that. And there would be about 5,000 people to the game on Friday night.
No kidding. At the high school game?
Yeah, half of the town would show up. If you played football, you walked down Main Street, all the business owners knew you on a first-name basis. It was really a big deal to play ball.
Wow.
In that town.
And what position did you play?
In high school, I played offensive and defensive tackle, went both ways.
What were some of the big schools who recruited you?
Well, all the major colleges, certainly in North Carolina, and a lot of them up and down the East Coast. I don't remember any offers west of the Mississippi, but talked to a lot of big schools.
And when you went to North Carolina, you ran into Coach Dean Smith?
Yes, I did. I actually talked to him about playing basketball, but again, the school was just too, it was just too big for me. I wasn't comfortable with it.
So what did you decide to do?
Well, I decided to look for a small school because I knew I wanted a college education. And I called Catawba College and said, hey, I'd like to come try out. And they said, great, come on, let's go. So I get there, and all the speed tests and the strength tests, all of that went fine. And they said, Bill, we'd love to have you play here, but we're out of scholarships. So
you got this great recruit, Division I recruit, and you're trying to go to NAI school, and they don't have the scholarship for you.
Yeah, and I said, well, what have I got to do to get a scholarship? And he said, well, you need to start as a freshman. I said, okay. I thought that was a fair deal. It was an opportunity. So that's what I wound up doing, started. And then after the first game we played, I'm walking out of the stadium back to the locker room, and a guy approached me from the Minnesota Vikings. And I was, blown away, obviously, a freshman in college talking to a pro scout.
Were they there just for you, or did they make it a habit of attending?
I can't imagine they were, but I don't know the answer to that. But I literally was in contact with a scout from some team almost, well, I know every week by the time I'm a junior and senior, every week.
Amazing.
Yeah, at that time, Dallas was doing a lot of recruiting, obviously, but they were, I think, one of the first teams in the NFL to use computers.
Really?
Yeah. To do the draft, and they would give you a strength test and a speed test about every other week, and an aptitude test too.
While you're in college?
Yes, and that is how they formulated how they were going to draft you.
Interesting.
Yeah, they drafted me as a pulling guard.
And what's a pulling guard?
Okay, back then everybody tried to pattern their team after the Green Bay Packers. And of course, Vince Lombardi had made them famous because they called it the Green Bay sweep. They would pull both offensive guards. Quarterback would take the ball and turn around and pitch it to the offside halfback. And half of the team is running around that end. And it was great for the offense, but the defensive end, he was in trouble.
Unbelievable. And they had so much success that everybody was patterning that. Just same thing we see in sports today. Somebody
exactly.
Sums out was very, very successful, and everybody wants to pattern themselves after it. So what was your college career like?
I would say the win-lose record was mighty ordinary. It was like 500. I never lost a football game until I went to college. You
were undefeated in high school?
Yeah, we were just, like I said, a football town. And my last 3 years in high school, the record, we were 39-0, and state champs all 3 years, and averaged over 37 points a game, and our opponents averaged less than a point. So
no way.
Oh yeah.
37 to less than one.
Yeah.
Less than one.
And we played 2A high school ball, a very small school. My senior year, the state champ 3A team was only 30 miles away, and we played them in regular season, and we beat them 14-0 in regular season.
My goodness.
Yeah, so we had a great football team.
You really did.
Yeah.
So you have a good college career as a player, obviously, and you got these coaches or the scouts checking in on you.
Yeah.
Tell me what year it is for the draft and how that unfolds.
Let's see, that would have been, I believe, January of '71. I was drafted in the 7th round by the Cowboys. Like I said, as a pulling guard. I had never played guard in my life, but that's what the computer said I should do. So that's how they drafted me. And I felt like I was in a boxing match when I went to camp. Because in the NFL, back then, you could still head slap as a defensive lineman. You can't do that anymore. But if they hit you over your ear hole in your helmet, with a cupped hand, it's like a loud explosion inside of your helmet. And it can really get you confused mentally, and that's why they used it. And there were some great ones, Bob Lilly, Jethro Pugh, Larry Cole, all those guys were great at it. That's who I was blocking.
And so you go through a tryout period with the team?
You go to rookie camp, and at the time, and I believe still, they hold that at Thousand Oaks, California. And I'll never forget the first meeting that we had. There was 120 rookies in this one room at Dallas camp. And the first thing, almost the first thing that Tom Landry said was, he welcomed us, of course, and then the next thing he said, this will be competitive. He said, one of you might make this team.
Out of the 120?
That's his words. Yeah, you look around, and I didn't see any sissies in that room. I mean, they were all ready to play physically, and it was a challenge.
So you make it, do they call it the 40-man cut?
40-man cut. When I was playing, the teams could only carry 40 active players and 7 men on the taxi squad. And usually the lineman on the taxi squad would need to be able to play all 5 offensive line positions. And you did everything with the team except dress for the game. And if someone's hurt, you could literally be activated right then and go in the dressing room, put your gear on, and go out and play. So,
incredible.
Yeah.
So you had to be ready at all times.
You had to be ready, yeah.
So they, how do they tell you that they're not keeping you?
Coach Landry called me in, and he said, Bill, you're doing a good job for me, but it's a game of numbers. We've only got so many spots, and I'm going to have to let you go. And he actually gave me a ride to the airport.
Himself?
Yep, Coach Landry did. Great guy. Didn't have a lot to say, but a great guy. Yeah. And his assistant coaches, the only thing Coach Landry would do is in the beginning of the game, just for a minute or two, he'd say a few words. He'd say just a few words at the beginning of halftime and just a few words at the end of the game. His assistant coaches did basically all the talking and coaching.
Interesting.
It is interesting because it's really different than Coach Shula.
Tell me what that was like.
Boy, oh my goodness, he was a hands-on, in-your-face type coach, but fair.
Now, he called you as soon as you got back to Florida after the Dallas experience?
The next morning, I got home, left Dallas and landed in, I think Fort Lauderdale, and my wife picked me up and took me to her parents' home in Boca Raton. And I'm laying there in the bed the next morning, 7 o'clock, the phone rings. And my father-in-law answered the phone. And he come running in there, and he said, Bill. He said, Don Shula's on the phone. And I said, yeah, right. And I thought he was joking with me because he was a jokester. He said, no, man, this is real. So I go talk to Coach Shula. He said, hey, Bill, he said, I need another lineman. Can you come down and give us a look? I said, sure. And they were, their training camp was Biscayne College. So I went down there and got a good workout in, and he kept me on the taxi squad. The 40-man squad was already made when I went down there. So again, Coach Shula was very intense, much different than Coach Landry, but fair.
And how did the transition to the next team take place?
That was a very interesting story in my life, and a time of internal turmoil because of lack of immaturity on my part. It was a tough time. I was working out, playing, practicing hard at Miami. And Coach Schuler called me in the next summer, right before preseason started.
Now, is this before the perfect season?
Yes.
Okay.
That very year, unfortunately. He calls me in and he says, Bill, he says, you're doing a good job for me. He said, but I've got all of my offensive linemen back. Half of them are all pro and the other half are all conference. And if you stay here, you're probably going to sit on the bench unless somebody gets hurt. He said, but I've got a chance to trade you to New England for their top defensive player, who was a linebacker named Steve Kiner. And he said, they don't have any good offensive linemen. You probably can go up there and start. So I said, boy, I want to play ball. So he made the trade with Upton Bell, who's the general manager at New England Patriots.
Mm-hmm.
And I was on a plane that afternoon to Foxborough. And I got up there and going to practice and started playing preseason games, but I noticed the only teams that I was on were kicking teams. Kickoff return, punt return, field goal, extra point, etc. So about the third game, I said, well, something's going on here. You know, even I can figure this out. So I asked for an appointment with the head coach. And he hadn't had anything to say to me since I had been there. And I went into his office and I said, look, what is going on? Why won't you let me show you that I can play? And he said, well, I didn't make the trade for you anyway. And I knew right then it was some sort of deal that wasn't good for me.
Mm-hmm.
It turns out that Upton Bell had made the trade with Don Shula. And the head coach at New England wasn't involved at all.
And he resented that.
I think he did, and I can understand that.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't understand it at the time. I was 22 years old,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But I get it now. But it was a tough time. So I asked him, I said, all right, that's fine. Cut me, put me on waivers, and maybe another team will pick me up, and maybe I can, make the team for somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he kept me to the 44-man cut, which was 1 week left in preseason.
Mm-hmm.
And cut me, and Upton Bell called me when he saw that, and I went to see him. And he said, Bill, I got you into this. Let me try to help you out. I said, great. So he called Art Rooney, who was still living at the time, the owner of the Steelers.
Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah. He said, I got a guy here. Could you give him a look? He said, sure. So now I'm in Pittsburgh. I'm a Steeler, okay? And I asked the coach, the headline coach there, I said, listen, what have I got to do to make this team? And he said, well, can you pass block? I said, I believe I can. So he said, stay after practice today. So after practice is over, I'm standing there, and he had talked to the defensive coach, and he had the starting 5 defensive linemen for the Steelers come over, and I pass blocked one play after the other with each one of those, all 5 of them. And they were what's called the Steel Curtain, Mean Joe Green, L.C. Greenwood, Dwight White, and those guys. But I had an outstanding time there. None of them got off the line of scrimmage. I even amazed myself. I don't know where all the strength come from, but by this time I'm pretty upset. It's probably adrenaline, an extra shot of it. So anyway, I'm going into the locker room, and all the offensive linemen had stayed out to watch this, because literally I'm competing for their jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And they come up to me, and we're walking back in. They said, Bill, that was unbelievable, man. You've made the team. And I thought I had. And anyway, the next Monday morning, Chuck Noll called me in and cut me.
So what happens after Coach Noll cuts you?
I traveled back home to Edenton, North Carolina, my hometown. And I'm working construction, and the owner on the construction site comes out and says, hey, Bill, Don Shula's on the phone for you.
Again?
Yeah. Okay.
Did you say I've heard that joke before?
No, I actually believed it and very excited to get a call. So I go in and Coach Shula says, Griff, Wayne Moore has got a sprained knee, and he was a starting, I think, left tackle. And he said, if he doesn't respond to treatment, can you come down and play? I said, absolutely. Just call me. So anyway, Wayne responded to treatment, and he was a good tackle, very good offensive tackle. And that was the end of the pro football for me, right then.
How did that make you feel? I mean, you've given your whole life to a mission, and that mission at that point was football, and it comes to a screeching halt, and you're good at it. You're still good at it when it comes to a screeching halt. How did you feel at that moment?
Terrible. Yeah. Again, immaturity was, it was a terrible time in my life. I was not mature enough to handle what was going on. I got so bitter, I didn't even watch a football game for 5 years. Yeah, it was a bad time.
There's been a lot of studies on Landry's coaching style, Shula's coaching style, and in Dweck's book on mindset, she addresses Coach Shula's style as one that's open, that he adjusts to the talent that he has. And but I'm sure he's still large and in charge, I would think.
I think so, but I think Coach Shula had a knack that reminded me of some of the coaching I had in high school, and they had the ability to just get 100% out of everybody.
Motivated.
Oh, they really did. They were good at it, and sometimes it was a silent treatment. It was different for every player because they all have different personalities,
And they adjust it for that personality.
Yes, like me. I love encouragement. If someone is the Barnabas in my life, I practically will try to kill for that person. That's how I react. Other people don't need that, but I thought Coach Shula was excellent at that. Yeah.
Well, you end up back home in North Carolina. You do some construction jobs, and then how do you get in the fishing business?
Got out of construction when my dad was retiring from farming. My brother and I wanted to get back into farming because we'd grown up on the farm. So we bought my dad's equipment and bought some more equipment, and then we started leasing or renting farmland and built up a really big farming operation. Unfortunately,
Thousands of acres.
Yeah, about 5,000 acres. And it was just, the timing could not have been worse for borrowing money. The interest rates had really spiked. And commodity prices were really low. It was a bad time to be in farming, and to make a long story short, I was going broke, and I saw it on paper, and I told my brother, I said, I'm going to get out. I'm going to start phasing out. We were in it together. So I did. I started phasing out of farming and eventually sold out in '79 and had gone busted farming. And the FHA was willing to help me get involved in another, it was kind of farming, but it was seafood farming, fishing. So they loaned me enough money to get a boat and some nets, and I started fishing, and it was looking like that was going to be a disaster as well because I couldn't catch enough fish to eat. It was really pathetic. I can remember the first time my wife and I, who worked with me, worked side by side with me, farming and fishing. The first time we went out with the drop net fleet out of Cape Hatteras, there was probably 30 to 40 boats at least were out fishing in the ocean, dropping weighted gill nets down into schools of fish and pulling them up. Alice and I fished all day. And all the boats came in that night, and we're all there at the fish house packing out. And every boat had, 2,000 to 4,000 pounds of British sea trout and croakers. And Alice and I had what we caught in a 5-gallon bucket. And it wasn't full.
Oh, no.
It was humble beginnings.
So it wasn't going well, and there was a guy that started visiting you, is that right?
Yeah.
Tell me about
Just
him.
a little bit later, but yes, I did eventually learn to fish and actually caught some fish.
Okay.
But this young pastor, Bobby Skeen, at a little Baptist mission there in Cape Hatteras, he would stop by every day, almost every day. I'd fish early in the morning, start at like 4 in the morning, be done with my fishing by noon, then I'd go work on my nets down on the beach that afternoon, be sewing and making nets and whatever. He'd come down every day, or almost every day, and ask me a gazillion questions about fishing. He said he loved fishing, and I could tell that he did. And I realize now that he was fishing, but he was fishing for souls. You know, that's what he was fishing for. So he was really getting irritating, you know, to me. And I said, I'm going to have to do something to get rid of this guy. So maybe if I ask him some questions that he can't answer, he'll leave me alone. So I started asking him questions, and he had really good answers.
You asked him questions about God or the Bible?
Yeah, and he was giving me good biblical answers and things that I couldn't refute, you know, and I said, wow. So this went on for a while, and then...
And I just want to unpack this a little bit. You're a tough guy at that point.
Yeah, at that point,
okay.
in my life, yeah.
Right.
And, well, commercial fishing will make you tough. It'll either kill you or make you tough. It's hard work. But anyway, I'm one Sunday morning, I'm sitting in my living room watching TV, and Jerry Falwell's on TV. And I'm listening, and he, at the end of his sermon, he said, if you are tired of messing up your life, if you realize that you can't run it properly, why don't you trust Christ to do that for you? And I said, you know, that makes a lot of sense to me. So I gave my life to Christ right there.
Right there watching
Right
television.
there watching Jerry Falwell.
And then you had $30 to your name, is that right?
That's an interesting story.
I want you to tell what happened.
Okay. I had been working on a net to fish in the ocean that I could set with buoys and anchors, and it was about 400 yards long, and it was a live fish trap is what it amounted to. Very similar to the one I had been fishing in the Pamlico Sound, except we drop stakes down in the bottom of the sound in 20 feet of water, tie the nets on those. Well, you can't do that in the ocean because the wave action will wring those posts off. So I'm developing this net, and I'm working hard on it, you know, just trying to, and I lost 2 rigs in storms because I didn't know how to take them up quick enough before the storms would come up. Just lose them. The ocean would wipe them out. Anyway, I got saved about this time, listening to Jerry Falwell preach. And I'm getting ready to go to church. This is another story. The next Sunday, I'm all excited. I got my suit on, and I've lost about 20 pounds since I quit playing ball, so it's hanging on me. But I'm sitting in the driveway waiting to get out to go to church. And the traffic is just frantic. And I didn't know what was going on. Well, I get down there, we'd had the time change, and I had missed church. Oh yeah, it's really frustrating. So next week, anyway, I'm ready to go to church again. And I asked Alice, I said, honey, where's the checkbook? And she said, what do you want the checkbook for? I said, well, I feel like I need to give some money to the church, and I don't know why, but I feel like I need to do that. And she said, we don't have any money. I said, well, how much have we got? She said, we got $30 in the bank. I said, okay, write me a check for 20. I'm not going to put it all in there, but write me a check for 20. So I put the check in there. I didn't think anything else about it. The next morning, at daybreak, my partner and I are pushing this 26-foot sea dory into the ocean with our truck. You back the truck up to the back, and you just push it right into the ocean. And we take off and go out to our net. And I noticed as we backing up to the net that the seagulls are diving like crazy into this net. The day is just breaking. And my partner Gary said, Bill, what's in the net? I said, I don't know, but it's solid black. It's just black. And the net was 40 foot square on top. So we drove our boat right into, you push the top line down, drive your boat right in, you pull a tunnel up that cuts the net off so the fish can't get out, and then you pull the corner bricks up, and you start pulling the web in under, and you're forcing the fish over to the back wall, and then you just bail them in your boat. Well, this sea dory would haul 4,000 pounds of fish at a time to the beach. We made 9 trips that day. We had 36,000 pounds of trout in that net.
36,000 pounds.
36,000 pounds.
And before you could barely fill a 5-gallon bucket.
That's what I'm saying. God has been so good to me.
36,000, and back then it was like 40 cents a pound?
Somewhere in there, 30, 40 cents. Not much, but still a big payday for me.
Oh, yeah.
But God's faithful. That's how he's been to me, and I'm not a name it and claim it guy, but I know he's been faithful to me. So.
And to kind of explain all of that, kind of the downside of life, living in a fallen world, Hurricane Andrew comes along.
Oh, yeah.
And what happens then? Okay,
I had been in the fishing business, seafood business, about 4 years, and we're catering, another partner and I, we're catering a lot of restaurants. It's 10 or more restaurants on the Outer Banks. We cut fresh seafood for them every day. And we're packing out fishermen at a couple of different fish houses that we had and shipping, truckloads, sometimes tractor-trailer loads of seafood to New York or Philadelphia or all over the place. But anyway, that's what's going on. And then Hurricane Andrew. I had 3 feet of seawater in my office. And seawater, of course, is salt water. And all our ice machines, everything's electrical, it ruins all those. And it devastated the fishing industry there. I mean, all my fishermen's boats were ripped out of mooring and taken half a mile or more up into the marshes. It was an ugly time. And then I met this gentleman in church that we had talked about previously, and he made me a job offer to get in the business that I've been in now 28 years. And
you're a financial planner. You have a business in Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Yeah, yes.
And what's amazing to me is how God has used everything that you've been through to bring his wisdom and his restoration to others. And it all goes back to that pastor kind of becoming irritating to you, and sort of sowing the seed and cultivating, the Holy Spirit cultivating your heart. And it all comes to that moment with the Holy Spirit in your living room.
Yep.
Bill, I want to thank you so much for being with us. It's just been a pleasure to talk with you and to hear how God has used you to bring his restoration to others.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.